everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Accommodation Show. This week, we're joined by the beautiful, the gorgeous, the charming Leo Walton from Superhog. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bart. Thank you. What a brilliant introduction. Did you have someone else booked and then you had to sub me in at the last minute?
Oh, look, you know that I've been waiting for this interview for maybe 2 years, so I'm gushing a little bit. It's been such a pleasure to meet you along the way. Before actually doing this podcast, we talked a couple of years ago now. We were going to do something. It didn't happen. Then I met you at a bunch of different conferences and events, and we've kept in touch. So it's really fantastic to finally have got here, finally to got to this moment to sit down and have a chat with you. How are you going?
Yeah, very well. I suppose we've both been quite busy, haven't we, over the last years? So I remember we met during COVID, right, where people were just on different screens. So I didn't know how tall you were. I didn't know, anything about your life. And it was that era of connections made in that time. It was quite easy, in a sense, to find people online and have video calls because everybody was in. Everyone was in and doing that. And then obviously we didn't manage to record anything that time. And then, yeah, I agree. It's been fantastic to meet you at conferences around the world. And what's happened in that time, I think, is that the industry's clearly kicked on again, right? It's kicked up another gear. In conferences have got bigger. The growth has happened in the post-COVID, travel recovery boom happened, and we all rode that wave. And yeah, it's been incredibly interesting. So we've been lucky, haven't we, to get to hang out in some interesting places around the world and be part of this tech-enabled growth that's happened.
Yeah, and yeah, like you said, just kind of riding that wave and seeing how it all goes. And what I love about what we do is, one is it's a great, I think, accommodation in general. It's a great thing to be of service to others and to grow as individuals and companies. But also, look, I think we're on episode 150 or something like that. There's quite a few episodes that have come out, and not everybody made it. The reality is maybe around about 20 or 30% of people that I've interviewed or talked to just never made it or never really got to the stage where they want to. But seeing you at the conferences and seeing the people that have made it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's, I guess, typical for an industry that's booming, but quite young. I heard someone describe it once as a mushroom industry, right? Every conference you go to, 10 more startups have popped up providing a service. And we're in this period now, I still think, of slightly companies popping up. Now we are starting to see merging and consolidation happening more frequently, but I think it's got a long way to go. AI will probably accelerate that. But I find it a really inspiring space to work in because it's tech. It's SaaS for a lot of people. I tend to socialize with other vendors, so we're providing SaaS products to the industry. But it's also, because it's accommodation, it's a very special industry because you're helping people make memories, right? Have special holidays. It could be someone's anniversary. It could be someone's Christmas. It could be a first holiday as a couple, and you get to be part of that. And I think it means that at its heart, it's a people industry. It's about empathy. It's about respect. It's about providing an amazing experience. And that's what I love about it. So obviously providing a piece of technology is really interesting. You can build different facets to it, and that's cool. And you do a lot of testing and learning along the way. But at its core, you're trying to be empathetic and people focused, which I really love, because when I was a young man, still at school, I worked in restaurants, and I loved it. It was great, like serving people's dinner and chatting to people, having that kind of connection with them, making that really special. I loved that, and I thought to myself at that point, I always want to be in an environment where I'm some way focused on that, which I think is why I've kind of fallen really neatly into being in accommodation, hospitality, however you want to term it. And yeah, that's it. That's the word I would use, is like, it's, no matter what you're building in this space, you have to be empathetic towards your customer, which could be a guest, could be a host, and remember that you're trying to facilitate them having a great time. And I think that's just brilliant.
Yeah, look, I like it how you're helping me segue into some of the topics and the ideas I wanted to discuss today. Superhog, now you guys, I don't know exactly how long you've been around. I believe you might have launched after me, actually. but I'll let you jump into that. So,
Sure.
Leo is one of the co-founders of Superhog. Can you give everyone the elevator pitch as to what you guys do?
Sure thing. So we provide risk management solutions for accommodation providers, typically short-term rental hosts, but also boutique hotels, apart hotels, people, anyone providing accommodation for people to sleep in, right? Providing a bed somewhere, we
Yeah,
might be involved in it. And I'll start by saying, if you don't have a strategy to combat risk, you're being very fatalistic and essentially accepting that at some point damages and problems will come to your door.
sure.
Because the more people you host, whether you're a short-term rental host, accommodation provider, hotelier, the more likely it is that someone's going to cause trouble or there's going to be issues. There's going to be accidental, deliberate, malicious damage. So we exist to try and combat that. And the traditional method for combating that is a fairly blunt instrument. It's insurance, which means that when something goes wrong, the insurance company pays out, or very often in the case of traditional insurance companies, doesn't pay out for the damage. And then everyone gets together at the end of the year and rewrites the policy and just excludes all of the things that happen typically so that they don't have to pay for them next year. Terrible. It's suboptimal. Insurance is rubbish. We exist to get ahead of that. We believe that prevention is just as important as cure. And actually, if you use data and screening in the non-traditional way, and you look at who that guest is ahead of time, you can de-risk the transaction and reduce the chances of something going wrong in a property. And then there's different instruments you can pull on. So you can do a deep dive screen on a guest or a light screen on a guest. You can also ask them to pay a deposit, or you can have protection from Superhog that will protect you up to $5 million. Essentially, you can build your own risk management strategy. But at the core of what we do is the fact that we will only protect people, protect hosts, hoteliers, if we are ahead of time doing a screening on that guest to make sure that they're not using fraudulent information, fake information, because that's the real scourge here in short-term rentals, especially, is people booking properties with fake names and having parties in them. And that's why we exist. And nothing makes me happier than when a client who's been with us for a couple of years speaks to me and says, I don't know how you've done it, but we haven't had a party in 2 years, right? And that's a massive shot in the arm for me, because sure, insurance on its own can protect you when that party happens, but that can't stop the reputational loss that might occur because you let that party happen in the first place. And we're all trying to protect our businesses and protect our assets. However, you've got to do that in a very guest-centric way. So we've built different mechanisms, different ways of screening guests that feel very nice and include, key information that they need before their check-in, so they don't feel that they're being dictated to and the experience is being lessened. We can also do that without the guest needing to interact with our software. So there's a complete variety of ways that you might interact with us. And that journey, really, multifaceted way of screening has taken 5 years to build out. And when we started, I would call people up and they'd say, well, who the hell is Superhog? And what the hell is guest screening? And now, thankfully, they know the answer to both those questions before we meet them. So that's really good. I think COVID helped accelerate that, because many hosts moved away from doing face-to-face check-ins and moved into the tech-enabled way of doing it, invested in keyless entry systems, Ring doorbells, things of that nature, that meant that they were no longer meeting people in person, looking at their ID, all of that sort of good stuff. And even if you are meeting people in person, using technology ahead of time is obviously going to be more efficient.
Beneficial.
So you can weed out people using fraudulent information. So yeah, it's a growing space. It's an interesting space. And, I think we're definitely both ends of the transaction, right? We're prevention just as well as cure. And there's a Russian proverb, which I think is just so appropriate here, which is, of course, we're trying to facilitate trust. You should trust your guest, right? And the saying is trust, but verify. And that's what we help people do.
So where did you say that proverb is from?
It's a Russian proverb.
Gotcha. I love it, and so that's so fascinating, because I mean, like, so you said 5 years, so we have been in business at roughly the same amount of time. And there's 3 founders that put Superhog together with a vision. One of the things I wanted to ask about before we get kind of into the weeds of where we are as an industry now and what guest verification means, and sort of the light touch and the heavier touch, which I think is something I want to focus on, because you can really detract from people, from the experience, if you get it wrong, and create a really horrible experience, and people don't want to engage with you, and they don't want to do what you want to do. But one thing I want to ask, when you started the company 5 years ago, and there was sort of a bit of a vision to provide, I guess, I don't know if you call it pseudo insurance or risk mitigation, as you said before. Has that vision changed much over the 5 years, in terms of that product that you're actually going to deliver?
Yeah, so Superhog as a business is 5 years old. What predates that is our insurance business, which allows us to sell lines of home cover to short-term rental hosts around the world. So like an equivalent of a replacement for your home insurance policy. So we had that first. So we understand risk because we have that sister insurance company. We then built software on top of that, which allows us then to insurance back all the products we provide. I would call it risk management. I wouldn't call it Superhog insurance. I'd say it's risk management because it is the whole spectrum. In terms of how we support, sorry, you'll have to remind me. You asked a really good question. Now I've slightly drifted from it.
I was
What's
talking
changed?
about
What's
vision.
changed?
I was talking about vision
changed?
from when you first started, and you saw that there was a need to sort of have a differentiating product, I guess, from the insurance, to doing kind of risk mitigation, where you've got a different breadth of products that you can actually offer. But where you started from 5 years ago, I'm really interested, because we did COVID, then we got out of COVID, and then now you've got a business, and maybe you've just honed down on that initial vision, or maybe you said, actually, things are a little bit different. We have moved a little bit. Technology has changed a bit. Maybe we've got AI. I don't want to give the answer to you, or
Yeah.
I'm just curious whether you guys did adjust or change your vision or
It's a
mission.
great question. It's a really great question, and I can tell that you have an entrepreneurial mindset, which is why you've asked it, right? So, of course, it would be any business that's starting. You're looking for as many different product market fits as you can find, because naturally you're entering, and normally the industry you'll be entering is up for grabs anyway, right? If there's lots of startups in it, it means it's being established. It's a different challenge, I'm sure, and one I can't speak about. If you're entering a very, very established industry with 100 years of companies sat in it, we're in a different scenario here, because everyone's learning how to host. So it's a completely evolving landscape the whole time, because there's new hosts coming in. That's one thing that, if you look at the data for the last 2 years, is there's more and more supply, more and more people having 3, 4, 5, 6 properties, and they're all so keen to learn and get education. I'm sure many of them are listeners to this podcast. So it's very progressive. It's very forward thinking. People are not just using established tools and that's it. They're not open to changing their mindset. People want new stuff, and they want stuff that's going to support. So what I've seen change is this fixation on ensuring that there's a really good guest experience, and you're able to upsell to guests and start the process of bonding with them from the word go, so that you can try and get them back as a direct customer. And all of that stuff we weren't thinking about when we built the first version of our guest journey. We were thinking about making sure that the transaction had been de-risked, whereas actually our partners, we're seeing that evolution around is the smarter ways to find out who that person is, doing a deep dive on the data without making them interact with it, using AI to support that journey. So it's more the technology part that's evolved. The concept of Superhog has stayed the same, which is to provide risk management solutions, cause and effect. Like it's not, it's about, and we can look at the data and say, we have, because obviously we're older, we're a couple of years older if you look at the insurance side of the business too, and we can say that if you use screening, there's a 10-fold reduction in damage. That's quite steady. That is steady across the industry. But what's changed is how that's executed at the front end through the technology part, which is reassuring, right? The concept is strong enough that it weathers storms and ups and downs. The concept is strong. It's how it's executed and how it's delivered to hosts that's evolved, and will continue to evolve as the industry does. Because, are we going to see a period now where PMSs all start eating each other, and we end up with 2 or 3 really established PMSs, and therefore the relationship you have with those PMSs will change? Because any vendor selling in our space, realistically, won't have many direct customers that aren't using a PMS working with them. So the PMS is everything. So changes in that landscape will affect all of us as vendors. So again, it's the execution, the application of your product evolves. The concept has very broadly stayed the same.
Yeah, wow. Great answer. Great answer. And it's nice to get into your head a little bit about what the change in thinking was, and kind of as it feels like there has been a bit of a philosophical shift. And as you said, that you're really leveraging the technology to provide some of those solutions. And it kind of, I think, ties back into what I was going to ask about, which is around sort of if we talk about guest verification. So we run Book Direct's websites, and it's a risk, right? If someone books direct, how do we know whether they say they are who they say that they are? That they're going to have a party, not going to have a party, do something untoward, or whatever in the property? And we know statistically that you're probably relatively okay, but the more you can do to de-risk it, then the better off you are. And I'm sure there's some of those steps that you can take. Now, one of the pieces of feedback that I've had from guests is I don't want to give over all that information to some American company or to some British company or to some foreign land, right? Like I don't know who these people are that are getting my ID. It's not like walking into a hotel and the front desk takes your ID from you. So sometimes the solution can be quite heavy-handed in terms of the amount of data that we're actually requesting from a guest. And I really love the fact that you identified that there are different opportunities along that journey to make it a bit more smoother for the guest. If we think about a platform like Airbnb, where they have so many data points and they've got the guest reviews, and they go, well, we've seen this person 100 times and nothing has happened, so they're probably their risk profile is not so high. So can you talk me through a bit of the light-handed, the heavy-handed sort of thing, and where what some of the options are for people?
Sure, and I'm going to go on a slightly long-winded journey to explain it as well. So just also interrupt me because I can pontificate, but you know me well enough to know I can pontificate.
The problem is we've only got half an hour, so
yeah, I know. Sorry. Maybe we need a three-parter. Although no one would want to put up with me for 3 episodes with it. What's been great about growing as a business is we've been able to hire and bring into our Superhog family really, really smart product people and tech people. We're now at sort of 80 members of staff, the vast majority of those in tech and product. And it's allowed us to really use technology to look at different data points and also go through this process of refinement around what are the trigger points within a journey that make people click away and not be interested in it. So again, the evolution, to go back to the previous question, is providing more carrot than stick in the process. But the other element is also actually just fully hiding that process and not making a guest actively go through it and still being able to screen them is really important. You mentioned Airbnb bookings, booking.com bookings, where someone feels quite safe within that platform. They might not want to be redirected to a different platform. We have to have a use case for that, but we have to be consultative because our host will want a different experience based on what's happened to them in their hosting journey. Maybe they've had a guest from an OTA that's caused a lot of damage. So they might be steadfast and say, I'm sorry, we want the guest to go through a very heavy verification process that does redirect them, and we're going to tell them that they have to do it in order to come and stay with us. We have to support that use case. Conversely, we have to support the use case which is I just want to put it in my T's and C's that they're going through this process, but I don't want, and on my listing details, but I don't want to actively send them on a journey. And so in its lightest form, we can use the data that we receive from a booking channel or a direct booking website. So at its minimum, that can be a name and a phone number. It can also be a name, a phone number, and an email. And we can run plenty of checks on that information to make sure that we can say categorically, take the booking or don't take the booking. And that's really powerful. So and also someone might say, for my OTA bookings, I want one journey, and for my direct bookings, I want another journey. Right the way down to, we can collect an ID, we can run checks on the ID, we can take a selfie, run checks on the selfie, we can do checks on date of birth, home address, full data range. Sex offender checks in the US, lots of states now are starting to mandate sex offender checks. So we can go as heavy as needed, or we can go as light as needed. And where you go heavier, that's where I recommend that you start adding in things like, look, once you go through this process, you're going to get a door code released to you. So there's more of a reason for them to go through it, because at that point you need to provide more carrot than stick for that person to to go through it. But yeah, it's heavy-handed to suggest, you don't use a sledgehammer to crack a walnut, right? And as you say, Bart, in the lead up to the question, we're not talking about 15-20% of bookings being damaged bookings. It's more like 2% if you don't use screening. But if you're doing a lot of bookings, 2% can be really hefty, and 2% could also be a party, which is going to cost you 50 grand to completely redecorate a home. How do I know that? Because I know our insurance business, and I know that they're still the type of claims you have to deal with, and we traditionally had to deal with before we use screening. So it's well worth it. You're spending a penny up front to save yourself a pound later. But again, lots of people are laser focused on guest experience, as they should be, and where they haven't had a major incident, they might be less sensitive to the idea of damage, and therefore they want it to be light touch. So as a provider, we have to be able to facilitate that. And I do think that the OTA piece is really important as well, because say a bank is doing a traditional KYC, right, which would always be, we take the ID, front and back of a credit card, whatever, there's a 3-step, 4-step process. It's established. The access point for that customer is always the same. It's, I've come, I need to get into my bank, or I need to make this transaction. I need to put my face in the frame to finish the transaction. I have to do it. Off I go. And you feel secure as a customer because you know the bank's protecting you as well as protecting the person you're sending the money to. Our industry is different because there's hundreds of ways that booking could have happened. There's hundreds of different channels and booking platforms and corporate booking accommodation providers where people book for corporates or film studios or whatever it might be. There's hundreds of reasons why someone might have had a different experience before they get into that journey. So you need to be sensitive to that. And obviously Airbnb do a really good job as well, because there is some checks. I mean, it's not perfect, and that's why people can. There's fraud on Airbnb as well, and people can change their name to their profile. But Airbnb is really good in terms of what it does, and therefore, a lot of hosts need a more tailored journey for that. So to work in this space, you have to be very willing to customize and adapt, because you've got to meet the guest where they are, or you're doomed, and the experience will not be as good as it can be.
I think also communicating with the guest up front as to what's going to happen. Sometimes I've been doing a lot of traveling over the past month all over Australia, and staying in a lot of regional towns, and then I'll get sent a form beforehand before I have to go, and the first thing I think is, oh no, how long is this going to take me, right? And then and you don't know if you can do it online or you can do it on your phone, and you don't know how many pages it's going to be, so you kind of open it up and you're like, oh god, all right, is this going to be is this a 2-minute job, or is this a 20-minute job where you're going to just ask me for absolutely everything and it's going to take me forever to fill out this information? So when we build our websites, that's actually something that we're quite cognizant of. We did a lot of work on putting like guest journey bars so they can see where they are in the booking process, so that by the time they get to the end of it, they're like, okay, cool, I'm almost done. I've got through those first couple of steps. So it kind of gives them that assurance that they're going to, there is a result at the end of it. It's, like even you read articles nowadays, or before you read the article, it tells you how long you're going to have to spend reading it, and then you make a choice as to whether you're going to do it or not. Talk to me a bit about, as we kind of get towards our close of the episode, and maybe we will have to do another one, just the kind of the guest experience side. It's something that you talked about a fair bit at the start of the episode, philosophically, about guest experience. What are you seeing coming up? What is, like, in terms of merging what you guys do with a guest experience, what's going to be really important?
I can start the answer to that question by taking over where I finished, which is meeting the guest where they are. So using AI, using communication tools that allow you to create a personal relationship with them super quickly at scale. It's always been the preserve of the one listing host, right? Oh, I text everybody, I send them a postcard, I go on WhatsApp and I find them and we talk. AI is going to really help more people get personal really quickly and bond with that guest. And it's so crucial because, OTAs are incredible at finding you the guest for the first time. But to really be at the races, you then have to try and get that person to come back directly again, or tell their friends they've had an amazing experience, especially as you get scale. Say you're able to dominate a certain beach market or mountain market. You want to be synonymous with that market from a guest and host point of view. So it's using It's using technology to, what I'm seeing people embrace and really be fixated on and focused on. I support wherever I see it, is this idea that a good guest experience will lead to a good review, which might end up bringing you another host. A good host review might bring you another guest. It's all about sort of ensuring that your website is linked to these positive experiences that people are having, and then when they're in stay, you go the extra mile. So like, you use technology to help build that relationship, but you execute hospitality by going the extra mile in stay. And this is not me. I'm not a property manager. I'm a vendor. But when I speak to property managers, and I do all the time, this is what I'm hearing is going on more and more. It's like, I can try and find out from my interaction with them beforehand why they're coming, and then I can try and personalize something for them in stay, a welcome box, some wine. I mean, it'd be no good leaving me wine, Bart, right? Because I'd have drank it within 5. That'd be the wrong thing to do with me. So, getting to know a bit about that person, about why they're coming, what you can do to help support that stay, hyper personalization, and there are tools that are helping you do that and helping you embrace that. And I think they're the property managers and hosts that are going to be around for the long term. And even if that guest is always going to be an Airbnb booker or a Booking.com booker, that's fine too. You make sure that you're providing that great experience, because A, it's great for your guests, and B, your host will respond really well to that and go, wow, this is a really professional company. So I'm loving that, and I'm seeing people really fixated on making sure that they're providing accommodation for their guests. And I think that's been a general trend from when we started, which was all about like, oh my God, I can't believe how easy it is to get this guest to come and book with me through an OTA. I'm on all the channels, boom. It's throw up a listing, get the guest to come, right, rinse, repeat. It's much more fixated on like, how do I provide this accommodation experience in a way that hotels and boutique hotels have been doing for years. I feel like SDR is catching up now. And that's why I think maybe there's a bit of merging of the accommodation space, because SDR hosts are becoming more focused on that.
Yeah, look, I couldn't agree more. If you look at like just listing websites and you look at sort of the quality of all the setups, right? So just the design work that's been done, the photography, it's all kind of, the bar has been set so much higher now, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the experience is great when they actually turn up. So there's this whole new wave of things that are happening, and you can't rely anymore on just putting yourself onto an OTA and just getting bookings, and that's the way it's going to work, because everybody's caught up. So now what are you going to do to differentiate yourself and to really get in touch with that customer, and kind of push through? So that's going to be an interesting next few years for us. But look, I'm super aware that we agreed that we were going to do a shorter episode today, but I really wanted to get you on the podcast, have a bit of a chat, get the ball rolling, because I do think that the other benefit for us is that it will open up some more opportunities to have more useful discussions about the future, technology, risk mitigation, and what you guys do as well. The other thing I wanted to say is a little tip of the cap for you guys for playing in the Australian market. It's great to have you over here as well, which I really enjoy. So you kind of, the world has really bridged from that time what we were chatting in COVID to now having me coming over and seeing you guys, and you guys coming over here. So the world is a lot smaller. Leo, are there any final thoughts or any tips you'd like to leave everybody with?
It's been great being on the show. I obviously love talking to you, so it's just like catching up with an old friend anyway. So I'm happy to come back at any point and do this again if people have found it interesting. We could talk for hours. You're quite right. No, not a tip. Just to re-emphasize that point, I think that like, we're in a fantastic spot at the moment where people can use technology to help jumpstart that relationship building with hosts and guests. And then it's like, we're in a people business, so it's all about empathy and support, back to that whole concept. So I like it. I feel like as a vendor in this space, I'm helping support people scaling and growing and still being able to provide that hyper personal experience. And I think that's really important. And if anyone wants to learn more, then find us on all the usual social channels at Superhog on Instagram, LinkedIn, and feel free to send me a message and we can talk.
Beautiful. And of course, I'll include your details in the show notes below, or if you're listening on Spotify or any of those channels, you can see the show notes there as well. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I know that I say it every single week. 90% of you are watching that are brand new and have never hit that subscribe button. So make sure you do, because it does enable us to do this more often. to spend more time on these episodes and get really great content to you, which is incredibly important to me. Leo, have a fantastic day over there in the UK. Looking forward to seeing you later on in the year, and wishing you all the best, bud.
You too, buddy.
Thank you.